Whether you love bookkeeping or hate it, you will love these 7 bookkeeping tools because they will help you accomplish more in less time. Stay tuned for our top list of bookkeeping tools and apps we can't live without. I'm Kristie Van Pay with Prosperity Bookkeeping, helping you take the guesswork out of small business bookkeeping. Before we even get into today's topic, I want to let you know that I have supplemented this video with my free downloadable bookkeeping workflow schedule, which you can use to maximize the effectiveness of the tools we're going to talk about today. Plus, if you hang with me to the end, I will reveal the bonus tool that helps me manage my business rather than my business managing me. Bookkeeping has come a long way since some of the first accounts of ancient tax records were found on clay tablets dating as far back as 3300 to 2000 BC. Even looking back to my childhood, computers were barely making their way into small businesses, and many records were still kept on paper ledgers. If you have done any bookkeeping at all, you can imagine how time-consuming and tedious this process must have been. Even since my first experience with bookkeeping, automation has made the process so much more enjoyable and efficient. A word of caution though, a blog post from comparethecloud.net said it best. Speeding up a beneficial process delivers value faster, but automating a bad process only makes it spiral out of control. If you do not currently have a solid bookkeeping process in place, do not attempt to implement any of these tools without the help of a professional. With that being said, let's dive into the tools. Tool number 1 is a bank feed in your accounting software. So the one that I'm demonstrating today is going to be QuickBooks Online and their bank feed, but I know that there are other apps out there for accounting purposes that have bank feeds as well. Xero, I know, is one of them, and I'm sure there probably are a few more. So what we're going to be talking about today is specifically the QuickBooks Online bank feed, and the reason that I love this so much is it connects right to your bank account. So you will link the account by clicking this button, sign in with your online banking credentials, and then it will connect your account. And then you can choose how far back you want it to bring in transactions depending on when the last time was that you reconciled your bank account or the last time that you did some data entry and got your bank transactions in there. Once connected, then it will go out to your bank on a regular basis. I believe it's actually every night, but it'll go out and it will retrieve the transactions that have occurred in your bank accounts and it will bring them into QuickBooks. Now, when it brings them in here, I want you to understand that this does not mean that they are on your financial statements currently. This is just bringing them in to show you what has happened in your bank accounts. You still need to do some activity here, and I'm not really going to get into all of that today, but just wanting to show you how much easier it is than manually entering every little expense in by putting in the vendor name and putting in the amount and putting in the date and assigning it to an account. And even better than that is, while you may still have to do that for a few of your transactions, like for instance here I see, let me pick one. So this Mahoney mugs, like maybe that's a new vendor that you haven't used before, and right now it's saying it's going to uncategorized expense. Well, you don't want it going to uncategorized expense, so in that case you would need to click this and you would need to assign it to the proper place. Okay, so once we open it up, we can see that we can change the vendor or customer name if we need to, and we can change the category. And if you're using classes and locations and things like that, you can change those as well, but those aren't in the sample company right now, so we don't have to worry about that. But Mahoney mugs for me would be maybe a promotional expense. Maybe I got some mugs with my logo on there, so I want to change this to advertising. And I'll go ahead and do that really quickly, and then I would just simply click the add button, and that will add the transaction. So once I hit add, it will add the transaction to my books and it will show up as an expense on my financial reports. So we'll add that one. The other nice thing about using the bank feed is if you've already entered some transactions into your books, like maybe you entered a bill and then you paid it to the vendor, when that check clears the bank, it's going to come in and it's going to search for any existing transactions that are already in your books that match that particular check that you've written, and it will show that there's a match found. So here we have a match to an expense for Tanya's nursery. And all we would have to do in this case, as long as we confirm that, we do believe this is the right transaction, the date is the same, the amount is the same, the vendor is the same, we can just simply click match. So that's all we have to do, and then we're done. Then you can also set up rules in the bank feed, which saves us tons of time, because a lot of our clients are buying purchases with their debit cards or their credit cards. And so then we're just getting the receipts for those, and they automatically hit, or maybe they have subscription fees that are automatically hitting every month. We can set up a rule for those so that every time those transactions in, QuickBooks automatically knows how to classify those. So here's an example of one that has a rule applied, and it'll show you that it's applying a rule. And the rule that we set up says that when a transaction comes through and Chin's Gas is in the description of that particular transaction, that we want to classify that to automobile expense or to fuel expense. And then we can even decide what we want the vendor name to be. So I like to keep things simple, and instead of having 25 gas stations listed in my vendor list, I like to just put all of my gas under one vendor called Fuel. So I've set up a vendor in my books called Fuel, and I set the rule so that every time Chin's Gas comes through, it gets put into the automobile expense account and it gets assigned to the vendor Fuel. So all I have to do when I see that rule applied is simply click add. And you can even take it one step further, and you can set it up so that those transactions will automatically add, so that you don't even need to touch them in the bank feed. There's a little button that you're going to push to do that, but I talk more about that in my video about setting up bank feed rules, which I will link in the description below for you. So I would just go ahead and add that. Then we have a few more here that are matching different things. And like I said earlier when I gave you the warning of this video, if you are not an expert at this, or I wouldn't say an expert, but if you're not really comfortable with your process and how things are happening, this is where you might want to bring an expert in, at least to get started, just so that they can guide you in the right direction, because you have to be careful, especially when things are matching up to sales receipts or invoices that have been paid by your customers. You want to make sure that you're correctly matching them to the right things. So just a little word of caution there. And the other thing that I wanted to show you in here, I just had one other one that was a rule. So when a rental comes through in the description of the bank feed, it should assign it to the rent or lease category and to the vendor Tony Rondonu or something. Not sure what that name is, how to pronounce that. So then we would just go ahead and add those. You can even sort. So let's say we wanted to sort by category or match column, so that we can kind of look down all of these matches, all of these rules look correct. So now to get these transactions recorded on my books, I'm simply going to just check everything off here. I've deselected anything that isn't already matching to a rule or a match, so that all I have selected right now are anything that is a match or anything that has a rule, and I'm going to go ahead and accept those so that I can just bulk accept them all at once and I don't have to go through one by one. Now, the other way that the bank feed saves time is when transactions are added through the bank feed and you go to do your bank reconciliation. Get into the bank reconciliation window here by going into my gear wheel and clicking reconcile. And if you are not familiar with reconciliations or why they're important or how to do them in QuickBooks, I also have a video on that I will link in the description below as well. Okay, so I'm in the bank reconciliation window here, and you can see there are a bunch of transactions here that are just, they're not checked off. They don't have this green little symbol or anything here. Those are transactions that were manually entered into the system. But if a transaction was entered through the bank feed, because it came directly from the bank, QuickBooks knows that it's already a cleared transaction, that it has cleared your bank. So it will automatically mark it checked off. It will show you here that it has been matched to a transaction from the bank feed. That's what this little symbol means. And it's even going to give you the date that it cleared, which can be very helpful if your reconciliation isn't coming out, to see when something cleared, or when you're done with your reconciliations, if you're looking through to see why there are items that didn't hit your bank statement. You might say that, okay, there was this transaction, a check I wrote on 9/30, but it didn't clear until October, so that makes sense that it wasn't on the September statement. So that is a really key way that the bank feed can save you time as far as reconciliations are concerned. So that pretty much ends my spiel on tool number 1, the bank feed feature in accounting software. Tool number 2 is Hubdoc. And I actually have a playlist on Hubdoc, so I will link that in the description below, and you can watch some pretty extensive videos on how Hubdoc works. But just to give you a brief overview for the purpose of this video, basically I'm on Hubdoc's website right now, and they tell you exactly how it works. So you receive a lot of financial documents in the form of receipts, bills, and statements, and sometimes those things are even emailed to you. You simply send those to Hubdoc using either a scanner, an app on your phone where you can just snap the receipt. You can link some of your accounts so that the invoices and statements go directly into Hubdoc. I don't personally recommend that method, but it is available for people who want that convenience. And you can forward invoices from your inbox into the Hubdoc portal. Once you do that, then we're going to take the information right into QuickBooks Online, and here's how we do that. So when an invoice comes in to Hubdoc, you can see the image of the invoice, which makes it really nice for data entry. So it's electronic, you can easily see all the details, and you're simply going to fill in a couple of things. Hubdoc does a really good job of trying to extract as much data as it can using artificial intelligence to kind of read the document. So they're pulling out the supplier, the invoice number, the date, and the amount of the invoice. So you don't even really need to do any data entry there other than double checking to make sure that it didn't make any mistakes or misread the document. You'd want to choose what document type it is. So in this case, it's a receipt. We've already paid for it. This is important because if it's a bill that you're going to want to pay later, then you would enter it as an invoice. In this case, we're just entering it as a receipt. And then once you hit publish, what this section does here is it basically is just a filing system. When you're filling in this information, you're basically telling Hubdoc how you want to file this particular invoice. So you're giving it the folder name, which is going to be the name of the vendor. And then it's also going to name the invoice by the rest of these details. And you'll find out why that's important in a minute. So this is the folder information. Your folders are located over here on the left, and I don't go into that in this video because I have a whole playlist on Hubdoc videos that you can watch, and then you'll see what I'm talking about. But then down here, the thing that makes this such a convenience is that you can sync your transactions to QuickBooks. And I believe there's also integrations for other accounting software like Xero and maybe some other ones, I'm not sure. But for the purposes of this video, we're using QuickBooks. So we would integrate this to QuickBooks. After you do a couple of them, it starts to remember where things go, so it'll automatically fill in, or you can actually set it up by vendor in the settings section so that it'll automatically know what to do with it every time. So this information is already filled in. You don't even have to worry about it, including even the account. But if it's a new vendor or somebody you haven't set up rules for, then you may have to manually enter this information. But once you do that, you just click publish, and it'll send the data over to QuickBooks along with a copy image of the invoice itself or the receipt itself, and it'll attach it to the transaction in QuickBooks for easy reference later. So that's really nice because then you'll have the receipts available for you in QuickBooks, or you'll have them in Hubdoc. So if you need to search for something, there's 2 different places that you could find them. In addition to that, if that's not enough redundancy for you, you can even have it sync to Google Drive. So it can go into a Google Drive folder, and it will file it the same way in Google Drive. If you check the button to do so, it'll file it the same way in Google Drive as it does in Hubdoc, so that you can search it in Google Drive by vendor name, by amount, or by date, which makes it really nice and convenient. So you'll see down here a whole bunch of other integrations that there are that you can sync it with. You can sync it with Dropbox, you can sync it with Xero, Bill.com. And I talked in Bill.com a little bit about how you would want to set up your sync if you were going to use Hubdoc and maybe QuickBooks and Bill.com. So there are a couple of other options here. Tool number 3 is Melio Payments. And I absolutely love this app. This one has come out somewhat recently, and the reason that I love it is it's already built into QuickBooks Online. So if you are using QuickBooks Online, you already have this app available to you for free within QuickBooks Online. But basically, this is a way to pay your bills directly from QuickBooks. Or you can use it as a standalone. So if you're not using QuickBooks, you can actually just get you can go to meliopayments.com and you can use the app directly by itself as a standalone, which is totally fine. If you're using it through QuickBooks, you still can log in to the Melio app to get additional details on things like when checks cleared and whether, there's lots of different details, and I don't want to get into all of that today, but you can use it simultaneously with QuickBooks, or you can use it as a standalone is my point. So long story short. So if you're in QuickBooks Online, and I'm in a sample company right now, and you go to the Pay Bills module, you will see this feature. When you click on an invoice, then you have the option to schedule payments online. And if you click that, it's going to be a real simple process, and I'm sure if I do it now in a sample company, it's probably not going to take me anywhere. Basically, it's just going to have you verify the vendor name and the address. It's going to ask you if you want to pay from your bank account or if you want to pay using a credit card. If you pay with a credit card, you're going to pay a fee to pay that vendor. But if you pay with your checking account, then there is no fee. And the best part is they will just go ahead and take care of sending your vendor a payment. And you can either pay your vendor via ACH so that it gets direct deposited into their bank account. So if you have their information, you can do it that way if their banking information. If you don't have their banking information, you can request it from them, or I think you can even send an invite for them to enter their own details, and then you could pay them electronically. Otherwise, Melio takes care of printing out the checks and sending them to your vendors on your behalf. So there's nothing you need to do there. No printing checks, no stuffing envelopes, no putting stamps on it, no going to the post office or bringing it out to the mailbox. It's all handled for you. Tool number 4 is Bill.com. Now, we don't use this one as much anymore, but this might be appropriate if your organization has a little more complex accounts payable process. So with Melio, it's pretty straightforward. You get a bill, you put it into QuickBooks, you use Melio to pay the bill. There are really no approvers. I know that might be something that's in the works with them, but I don't think as of yet they've incorporated that feature. So you can't really have approvers. And there's a few other features that are kind of missing. Bill.com is a more robust solution that has a lot more features and can accommodate if you have to have multiple people approve a bill before it can get paid. Maybe there's somebody in the purchasing department, and then maybe there's somebody in the actual department that made the purchase that both need to approve it or review it or match it up to a purchase order or whatever the case may be. Then Bill.com would be a good solution for that. You can also use Bill.com in conjunction with Hubdoc. So what we were doing when we used to use Bill.com is we would have all of the receipts and everything come into Hubdoc. We would enter the information there. It would sync a copy over to QuickBooks, and then we would also sync it to Bill.com so that it would be sitting there waiting for either the approvers to approve the bills or for us to go in and actually make the payments. It works again the same way. You can pay your vendors electronically, or Bill.com would take care of printing and mailing checks on your behalf. At least that's how it was when we were using it, and I'm sure it's still that way today. You can even do foreign transactions, I believe, and multi-currency possibly, even if I remember correctly. So definitely a more robust solution. And the problem that we were having is rather than having everything come right into Bill.com, which we could, instead of having Hubdoc, we could have had all of the receipts and everything come into Bill.com and enter everything. But when we were doing that, then when we would sync it to QuickBooks, it would send the data over, but it wouldn't send an image of the invoice or receipt along with it. Also, it was a little clumsy for processing things like receipts, so things that are already paid for. It wasn't as easy of a process to do those types of things. You can do it, but it's a clumsier process than using Hubdoc. So we kind of incorporated the two together so that we could do the document management in Hubdoc and then just have everything synced to QuickBooks and Bill.com so that we could do all of our bill pay from Bill.com. So if you go to Bill.com's website, they actually have a nice little recap here of exactly how things work in there. That just plays for you. So I'm not going to go into too much more detail here, but just letting you know that the tool exists and it really does make life easier. Tool number 5 is a merchant services account that's built into your accounting software. So the one I'm talking about today is Intuit Merchant Services, but there may be some other forms of accounting software that also have their own merchant service platform built into the app itself. But the one I'm familiar with is Intuit Merchant Services. Now, before I get even too far into this, I'm probably going to get some slack on this because I have so many people say to me, oh, it seems like their processing fees are so expensive. Well, their processing fees really aren't that much more expensive than like Square or PayPal or any of those other merchant processors that are kind of like a convenience processing app. And let me tell you, labor is not cheap, and though I may pay a little bit extra for the processing fees to use Intuit Merchant Services, for the size of invoices that I process and the size of payments that I process, it is well worth it to me to pay the little bit extra for the automation and convenience that comes with it than for me to have to pay a person to do all of the manual work that is happening behind the scenes because I'm using an integrated merchant service with my accounting software. So nothing against if you're using an outside merchant card processor. They are great. There's some wonderful people. I have one who happens to be a client of mine who I absolutely love and I adore her. But, you know, if you're processing large invoices and there are really extravagant fees associated with that, well, then you might not want to use something like Intuit Merchant Services. But if your invoices are, you know, of smaller value and it's, you know, not... it's probably going to be cheaper for you to pay the little bit extra fee on processing than it would be to hire a person to do all of the manual matching up. And let me tell you what I'm talking about. So when you create an invoice in QuickBooks and you're using merchant card services, you can select a little radio button that allows your customer, when you email the invoice to them, to pay you either via bank ACH, which is a much lower fee, or by a credit card, which is a little bit higher fee, obviously. They can choose which one they want to do. They just click the link, they go enter their payment information, they pay you. At that point, because they used the link to pay the invoice, QuickBooks already knows what invoice it's supposed to pay. So QuickBooks takes the payment, it applies it to the proper invoice, it records the deposit on your books to match up with the batch deposit that goes in from the merchant services. So when you process, say, 3 credit cards in a day, they're not going to all individually get deposited into your bank account as 3 separate transactions. They're going to go in as one batch deposit for those 3 different payments. So you've saved yourself the time of having to open an envelope and take out somebody's payment. You're saving yourself the time of logging into QuickBooks and finding that invoice, receiving the payment. Then you have to go record the deposit if you're going to put multiple checks in and you're not having it go directly into your bank account, which I don't recommend you have it directly go into your bank account, but that's another story for another day. So you have to go record the deposit. You have to probably either mobile deposit that into your bank or take those checks and bring them to the bank. Like, that all costs time and money. And when you add that all up for every single transaction, you're probably saving money by paying a little bit extra and using the Intuit Merchant Services. So not something that you necessarily have to do, but we love it because it saves us a lot of time and it really does automate the process, and it reduces the possibility of error as well, because when they use the link, it's already associated with the specific invoice that that payment belongs to, which means no misapplied payments or questions later on down the road. Tool number 6 is a little bit more advanced tool, and this is more for forecasting and modeling, but it is also a great tool for managing your accounts receivable. And honestly, we use it probably a little bit more for that than anything else, but managing your accounts receivable also goes along with forecasting cash flow. So they do still ultimately tie together, but the name of the app that we use is Dryrun, and Dryrun is a great tool. And, you know, it depends on how savvy you are. If you or your bookkeeping or accounting team is pretty savvy, then this might be something you'd want to consider. If this is something that, you know, you're just doing your own bookkeeping and you're not that comfortable with it to begin with, this is probably not an app that you would be implementing into your business at this point, unless it's something that you feel you really need. And then I would advise just finding a professional or somebody who is a certified Dryrun provider and have them help you with this. So basically what you can see here, if we just kind of move down here, is there are ways for you to model different scenarios. So you can say, hey, if we made this big purchase, how is that going to affect our cash flow? Or if we increased sales by 3%, what does that look like over the course of, you know, of the future? How many months in advance? How does that help our cash flow? Or how do making purchases hurt our cash flow? And those types of things. It also helps you manage the sales pipeline. So here it'll give you like an action list each week of things that you should be paying attention to. So if that's following up on past due invoices from customers, it gives you the list of all the ones. It helps you can sort them and categorize them by, largest amount due or the most, the most past due and different things. So you can get this list out of here every week, which is like an action list to stay on top of things, which is very helpful. And then you can even get this cash flow forecast scorecard, which is giving you an idea of, okay, what's in your bank accounts today, what recurring expenses are coming up, how many days before you run out of cash, that's your runway, and that's showing 7 days here. How much do you have in open invoices? How much do you have in open bills? Hopefully you have more in open invoices, which is money coming in, than you have in open bills. But if not, you can see that here, and you know that you are going to need to take some action so that you have enough cash to be able to cover those bills. So Dryrun is a really great tool for going a little bit more deep into the bookkeeping process or accounting process and really being able to manage your business in a forward-looking manner rather than always in a historical-looking manner. Tool number 7 is a payroll, benefits, and HR management software called Gusto. Now, Gusto, prior to being called Gusto, they were called Zen Payroll, and their tagline at that time was payroll made delightful, or delightful payroll, or something like that. And before I found them, I didn't even offer payroll services because payroll is frankly a pain in the you-know-what, and I didn't want to deal with it. But then I found Zen Payroll, which is now Gusto, and it is truly delightful. So the nice thing about Gusto is that everything is done basically electronically. It's an automated payroll process. So your employee, when you hire somebody, you enter in just a few key details. They receive an invitation. They put all of their onboarding information in there. They fill out their employment forms like their W-4, their I-9. They put in their direct deposit information, all of their personal information that's necessary, their social security number, all that stuff. They're putting that in themselves through an online portal that they set up, and they can use that portal from that point on to get onboarding letters, to get their pay stubs, their W-2s. They can log in and change their withholdings at any time, all of that stuff. And basically, you do need to have some payroll knowledge in order to use it, because you need to understand the rules and the laws, because at the end of the day, the burden is on the employer to understand and know what the rules are for payroll and what the laws are regarding payroll. So you do need to kind of have a background in payroll processing, or, even if you just as a small business owner take a course through a, community college or something like that to get the basics down, that would be a good idea. But other than that, Gusto pretty much takes care of everything. So all you have to really do is go in, and if you have hourly employees, you would need to go in and enter their hours, and it's just a simple, box that you fill in their hours, and then you hit submit payroll, and Gusto takes it from there. They direct deposit everybody's money. They pay all your payroll taxes, they file all your payroll tax returns, they process your W-2s at the end of the year. And depending on which package you have, now that's the basic package, but there are more robust packages that also include services like benefits and even some HR stuff. So, human resources, giving you advice and information that you need in order to manage your employees, to take care of your employees, and make sure that you're following the law and all of that kind of a thing. So it's a really great platform. I wish I could demonstrate for you how easy it is to run a payroll, but unfortunately payroll is pretty sensitive information. So I'm not going to be able to do that in this video. But if you go and check it out, you may be able to just talk to a sales representative, have them show you a demo, or maybe you can even search around on YouTube. Maybe somebody figured out a way to do it with some sample data or something like that. So highly recommended if you have payroll in your organization. And finally, the bonus app that brings all of this together and helps me to manage my business so that my business isn't managing me. And that is a workflow system. The one that I use in particular is called Arrow Workflow, but there are many other ones out there. Now, Arrow Workflow was written specifically for the accounting industry, but that doesn't mean that it can't be used by somebody in any other industry. So I definitely wouldn't knock it for that. It's just that if you are in the accounting industry, it has a lot of canned procedures and different things already built into it that really help us just make it that much faster to implement the app into our business. But there are many out there. There's Monday.com, there's Asana, there's a million of them. I could sit here and name a whole bunch, but if you just look for task management software or workflow software, you'll probably find some very good options out there. But the one that we use, I really like it. So it helps me to manage my entire business and know what's going on at any given point in time. I have the tasks of every single person in this organization in this system. I can group them by user so that I can see exactly what everybody's working on at a glance at any given moment in time. I can sort them by due dates, start dates, gosh only knows, by the client, however I want to sort it. I can look at any kind of data I want at any point in time on the work that we currently have happening in our organization. To make it even better than that, it's not just a simple checklist, which I could use, Google Task List or something like that if I just was looking for a to-do list. But it also allows me to create templates of standard operating procedures for every single task we do in the company, so that at any given time, if somebody is sick or can't be in the office, that all I have to do is reassign that task to someone else. And all of the instructions are right there in the standard operating procedure. It's a checklist. They can go right down. There's videos that they link to so that they can get further information. So every template is saved in here. And anytime that I need to create a new template or edit a template, I can go in here and make the updates so that everybody has the most up-to-date procedures. They're not stuck in a binder somewhere that's been sitting on a shelf for 5 years and nobody has updated anything. I can go in here at any time a change happens, which literally is practically weekly, and I can go update the procedures so that everybody is always on the same page, and it really helps with communication. So once they're inside of a task, then we can have all of the pertinent information that's needed here. The other nice thing about this workflow software is it integrates with QuickBooks. So if they're working on a task, it's actually tracking their time as they're working on that task. And then when the task is complete, it syncs the time over to QuickBooks so that we have all of our timesheets completed just by using this app. We can tell it here, what are the apps this person needs to use in order to do this particular task, and what area, what department is this? So this is a marketing and sales task. So the marketing and sales department has it. The data entry department has it. The production department has it. The finance department, they all have access to this system, so we're all using the same system with the same information, which makes it really nice and easy. You can put in there the estimated duration or amount of time that the task should take so that you can run reports to see, okay, they should have had this done in an hour. Why did it take them 3? Doesn't mean that they're necessarily doing something wrong. Maybe it means that you're not estimating very accurately and you need to adjust your estimating. So there are so many benefits to using a software like this in your organization. So in addition to all of that information up there, then we have down here the steps that are associated. And within those steps, we can include action links. So if they need to go to a specific app, we can put the link in there that will bring them right to the app so that they don't have to go searching for it. If there's additional information, like maybe another document that gives more specific details, we can link to that document. If there's a Google Drive folder that they need to save something to, we can link to the Google Drive folder. We can put all that in here, and everything is there at the touch of a button. And it doesn't show it here, but when you're in a specific task, doing a specific task, so for instance, if I just go into the task I'm in right now and scroll to the bottom, then there's additional information down here. So you can put notes about the company in here so that no matter what task they're in, as long as it's assigned to that company, those company notes are going to show up on every single task. You'll be able to see any other arrows that, well, they're called arrows in here, but an arrow is a task. You'll be able to see any other tasks that are associated with this particular company. You'll be able to find the company contacts. So who are the people that we need to get in touch with if we have a problem? You can assign team members to specific companies so that you know which team members are assigned to this particular account, so that if I have questions, I know where to direct the customer. So all of that stuff, including time records. So let's say I'm working on a task and I don't get a chance to finish it today. I can defer the task until the next time I can work on it, and it will keep a log of all of the time that was spent on this particular task until I've finally finished it and save and complete the task. So I'm not necessarily touting Arrow, although I do think it's really good, and I've tried other task management software and none of them have all of the features that Arrow has. They all have bits and pieces, but if I could combine them all, then I would have Arrow. So just that would be something to consider. But if you don't go with Arrow, I would say any type of a workflow software is a must. If you are an entrepreneur who is trying to scale your business, you have to have oversight and control of the entire organization, and this is a great way to do that. I have shared with you my 7 favorite bookkeeping tools, all my favorite tips, including the bonus app that helps me stay in control of my business. But if you want to make sure your bookkeeping stays on task with or without these tools, download my free bookkeeping schedule linked in the description below. If you found this video helpful, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already done so, subscribe to the channel. Comment below, which of these tools are you already using, or which are you excited to try? There is a fly. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.